Welcome to Just Asia, AHRC TV's weekly human rights program. These are the headlines. Changing perspective can help realize rights for a marginalized group in India. State brutality against citizens in Pakistan. Deadline approaching for Nepal's transitional justice institutions. Rule of law and penal code revision in Indonesia. Bangladesh electoral system and process. Welcome to AHRC TV's Just Asia. I'm April Wong. This week's episode of Just Asia is a special focus on the regional meeting of Asian parliamentarians and human rights defenders against torture, held in Hong Kong in December. During the meeting focusing on modernizing criminal institutions, Just Asia interviewed several parliamentarians and rights defenders. Beginning with India, Just Asia speaks to Dr. P.M. Nair, Chair Professor at the TATA Social Sciences Institute. According to Dr. Nair, institutions need to work together in India to combat torture, and he is confident that once this occurs, things will improve quickly. Dr. Nair also noted the importance of persons implementing laws and regulations to have a human rights perspective, which would particularly help vulnerable and marginalized sections of society.
The police, the prosecution, the judiciary, lot of issues are there. And the issue of torture itself is very, very strong there. It may not be noticed outside, but it is there. Now, in such a scenario, India is not one state. It's so many states together. So each state police in India has to work on those lines. Naturally, it's the Chief Minister and the DG Police, the Chief of Prosecution and the Chief Justice and High Court, they all have to work together. But once they take a decision jointly and find out ways and means of preventing torture, I think India can make a fast stride and a tremendous progress in a short time. That's my conclusion, because things are actually good. Now, to make good better and best, it will not take much of a time. And it's time that the human rights defenders, which includes right from the Honorable Chief Justice of India down the line everywhere, are all concerned. Now, we want to take our concern to a commitment and a commitment to an action. I think that will happen. This has to happen, and I'm sure it will happen. The major issue which is in the entire Asian context and India specifically, there are a lot of underprivileged sections of society. The scheduled castes, the scheduled tribes, the backward castes, the minorities. And if you see them and other communities and see how each one gets the benefit of rule of law, there is certainly a wide discrepancy. So when you have such strong human rights defenders in a nation like India, the point is why such underprivileged sections are still being deprived of their own rights. So obviously there is a gap. The gap lies not in the system. The rules and constitution and provisions are all very good. It is the mind of the person concerned. The person who is implementing, that person also has to see from the human rights paradigm. When a person from the minority community, or when a person from the backward section, or when a person is handicapped, that person is a person needs special care and attention. So unless we give that special care and attention, we will not be able to take justice forward. So in such cases, wherever we have an underprivileged group, whichever nomenclature, including women and children, the justice defenders, means police, prosecutors, judiciary, activists, all of them have to take not only one step forward, but 2 steps forward. If you take that 2 steps forward, it's within the law. I'm not saying go beyond the law, but within the law, 2 steps forward, I think we can make a tremendous impact. That's what is required, and these steps lie in the mind of the person. Once the mind says, okay, I am here, let me get the justice delivered, nothing stops. That's what is required.
Next, Pakistan has been topping all the indices of human rights abuse in 2016. The establishment of military courts and worrisome rise in execution has brought to the forefront state brutalities against citizens. Many of those hanged had been tortured into confessing. Just Asia interviews Pakistani member of National Assembly Imran Zafar Laghari to learn his views on the rising incidents of torture and corruption in the policing and judicial systems.
Well, in my opinion, the justice that is providing to the people of Pakistan, it's not the real justice. We should work on it and to provide to the people of Pakistan. It needs to be legislated. It's need to be checked. It needs to be, a system should be on a judiciary system as well. We need a check and balance, which is lacking in our country. And the parliament should have to play a role on it. And the parliament should have come forward to implement those laws where the judiciary can be checked and balanced as well. Because in the history, we have seen a lot. We have seen the judicial murderers, we have seen the missing person cases, we have seen the misleading, the corruption cases, we have seen the wrong suo motu actions. So we have to work as a parliamentarian, as a Parliament of Pakistan, we have to work strong on that and make some new laws to check on the judiciary so they can provide the pure justice to the people of Pakistan. 2013 was the first fair elections where the democracy was transferred to the democratic government. Before that, there was always an army intervention between the Pakistan. Democracy, to strengthen democracy, Parliament has to play a very key role in it. As the history, if we go around and go back and we see the history of Pakistan, we have seen the too many military intervention in Pakistan that had weakened the parliament, that had weakened the parliamentary system of Pakistan, that had weakened the political system of Pakistan. But now it's been 8 years, we are going in another general elections, inshallah, in 2018. And I think so 3 more tenure more of the democracy, then the parliament will be strengthened and then the real democracy you can see in Pakistan. Right now, it's like, I don't want to criticize, I'm the opposition, I don't want to criticize the government. But right now, the minister who's heading the Department on Interior, Minister Federal, he's brutal himself. I'm not saying about him, but it is the fact. It is need to be sorted out from the federal, then it will transfer to the provinces, because the 18th Amendment and what happened in 2000 before the last 5 years in Pakistan People's Party government, we have strengthened the provinces. We have given them powers to strength, but the policy which will go around the country should be the federation policy. And I think so the police system should have, we can hire the psychologists, doctors, and these kind of brutal interrogation is not a solution. Interrogation is not a solution. Interrogation for me, if you do the interrogation with me, I will say, yeah, I was thief. There was a famous joke about a cow and elephant roaming around in a jungle, and they say, oh, I'm a cow because the police is coming. We need to sort it out. We need to provide them a justice, we need to provide them a legal system, we need to provide them a psychologist, we need to provide them, at least every human is not a criminal. No human born as a criminal. The society, its surroundings make him criminal. So every human has a capability to change anytime. So we can work on it, we can provide education to them, we can provide doctors to them. Interrogation is not a main solution to admit the crime, or I have done this, I have done this. It's just a brutal thing which I totally am against it, and most of the parliamentarians all around the world are against it.
In Nepal, the February 2017 deadline for the Transitional Justice Commissions to complete their work is fast approaching. However, other than collecting over 60,000 complaints and starting preliminary investigations, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and the Commission of Investigation on Enforced Disappeared Persons have not succeeded in anything meaningful. The conflict victims, as well as the national and international community, do not have any confidence in these commissions. Victims feel neglected from the transitional justice process and have little hope that justice will be served. Meanwhile, Nepal's anti-torture legislation is pending in the parliament, with Colonel Kumar Lama being released by the UK court. There are nominal chances for the parliament to pass the anti-torture legislation and put it into practice. Just Asia speaks to Mr. Dipendra Jha, a practicing lawyer at the Supreme Court of Nepal, for his views.
Yeah, it was in the very fast track process basically, but after Colin Kumar Lama, when he got a clean chit in UK court and after he returned, I see the process has become slow. So what I feel that the process was fast and due to give a message to international community including UK that we have our torture law that criminalized torture and we are going to pass, so return him back to country, because there was a kind of the UK court has said that okay, you don't have a competent law in Nepal because your law does not treat torture as a criminal act, rather the civil act. So that's the reason that after he returned, now the issue has become slow and nobody cares about it. I see now there is a less interest to pass it in a fast track process, but definitely we have like a whole bunch of transitional justice issue, Truth and Reconciliation Commission, disappearance commissions. So both these commissions actually before they come to the conclusion of any recommendation about either prosecution or reconciliation, they need the Torture Act in Nepal. So I think definitely they will pass, but it will take time with the transitional justice process. Now not with the Kumar Lama case. Basically I was in as an in expert committee of Truth and Reconciliation Commission, drafting the law on investigation of human rights violation, and we have submitted basically how to investigate the 60,000 cases which are pending in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So definitely there are large number of cases, but we don't have like a amended act because the Supreme Court asked to amend, and yeah, so that's one thing. I see there is a some kind of delay from the government side in passing the amending the Truth and Reconciliation Commission Act. Another thing is that the term of the commissioner are going to expire in next 3-4 months, and I don't see there is any initiation to extend their mandate, their term. Third things, I see like a lack of human resources to investigate 60,000 cases, and lack of capacity within the commissions. And the reason for that is that international community is not cooperating with Truth and Reconciliation Commissions because they are thinking that it is incompetent commission, the law is not competent enough to that meets with the international criteria. So I see now the time has come even for the international community to think whether they want to cooperate or not, because if they don't cooperate, the 60,000 cases are not going to be investigated. So I see these are some complex and in transitional justice process.
Next, Indonesia also faces a rise in executions and the use of the death penalty. At the same time, the revision of the country's penal code has been ongoing for over a decade. Member of the drafting committee, a parliamentarian, Mr. Asul Sani, speaks about his views on the penal code revision process and rule of law in Indonesia.
First of all, we basically provide the principle of rule of law in our constitution. Yeah. Our constitution clearly states that Indonesia subject to the rule of law. Indonesia is what we call in the Dutch term is rechtsstaat, a state which based on rule of law, not machtsstaat, a state which based on a power. Yeah, that is the basic principle which we clearly provided in our constitution. Yeah, from the constitution, then yeah, we further regulate in various act, various statute enacted by the parliament and the governments. For example, we then regulate the further principle of law and its operation of the principle in the Judiciary Act, yeah, in the Police Act, in the Prosecutor Acts, yeah, and few other act or statute. First, I can explain that until today, our penal code is inherited, yeah, from the Dutch colonial era, yeah, with various law added after Indonesia got its independence, yeah. In the current sitting term of Indonesian parliaments, yeah, we then with the governments agree to introduce the new penal code, and now is being debated. Yeah. Another hot debate is on the capital punishment, death penalty. Yeah. But on this issue, we able to mediate between the group which is against the capital punishment, which demanding the deletion, the abolishment of the capital punishment, which the group which persists, which remain to insist that capital punishment should be maintained in the Indonesian criminal law system. Yeah. What is the middle way between the two groups? We agree principally to maintain the provision on the capital punishment as a kind of criminal punishment, but if someone then being judged with a final and binding court judgment, yeah, with capital punishment, then he or she put in prison, and he or she becoming a good person, not repeating any other crime during his life in prison, and then within 10 years, his or her capital punishment will change automatically to be life imprisonment or 20 years imprisonment. That is some significant obstacle and also progress which we have achieved so far.
Bangladesh has been considerable violence and political manipulation in the last year. Dr. Badil Alam Majumdar, Secretary of Citizens for Good Governance, shares with Just Asia his views on free and fair elections and the Bangladesh electoral system.
Bangladesh Constitution created an election commission to ensure that the elections are credible as well as acceptable. And unfortunately, the system of election that has evolved, especially in the last few years, especially during this present election commission, under the present election commission, is not credible and is not acceptable. So if we look at the elections, especially since the beginning of 2014, the beginning with our 10th parliament elections, and followed by Upazila election, which is sub-district level local government, followed by city corporation elections, union parishad election, which is the lowest level of local government, and Paura Sabha election, municipal elections. And all of these elections were not credible. The election commission has not been fair, the election commission has not been neutral, and people complained they didn't pay attention to those. And in fact, recently, they had to, the court at one point intervened in some cases when people complained And election commission didn't pay any attention. They went to the court, and court asked the election commission to look into the matter, and the election commission didn't do that. And finally the high court asked the election commission, all the election commissioners, to go to the high court and apologize and to the court. And this was quite a humiliating experience. And in fact, after that, it speaks a volume about the neutrality and competence and the ability of this commission. In fact, after such humiliating experience, they have no right to stay in the positions they have been holding. There is a connection. There is a strong connection. Unfortunately, since the government came to power with one-sided election, without a mandate, without the consent of the people, and so to stay in power, they need to use force. Basically, they need to use means which are not consistent with the human rights covenants and human rights what we expect in a society, in an environment. They are not consistent with the people's protecting human rights. So since the government has no mandate, they had to use force, and that necessarily led to human rights violations, excesses, and manipulating the system, and various ways of intimidating people, and in other ways making sure that people don't speak up, people don't protest, people's rights are taken away. Some of the fundamental rights are taken away, and unfortunately all our institutions have eroded. Our constitutional institution, our statutory institutions, and even non-state institutions such as civil society is under serious pressure, serious threat. Justice institutions, if we talk about the judiciary, higher judiciary, lower judiciary. Lower judiciary, there is widespread accusations of corruption and manipulations and influencing judgments. You can buy judgments. There are allegations. Higher judiciary, there are accusations, and most serious thing that happened to the higher judiciary is the partisan appointments.
That is all for the episode of Just Asia. For more on this and other issues, please visit www.humanrights.asia or www.alrc.asia/justasia. Thank you for watching and see you next week.